It was 10:32 in the morning when the Pacific sky caught fire. 4 Japanese aircraft carriers burned at once, their decks collapsing into the sea, and somewhere far away in Tokyo, one man whispered the same words again and again. "I warned them." But what exactly did Admiral Yamamoto know? Why did Japan walk willingly into the trap he predicted? For decades, the truth behind Midway was buried, locked inside reports the world was never meant to read. Until now. Weeks before the first bomb fell over Midway, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto sat alone in his Tokyo office. The smell of ink and tobacco filled the air. On his desk, a single letter that no one wanted to read. He had seen it all before. The arrogance, the overconfidence, the blindness that always comes before defeat. He had commanded at Pearl Harbor, the operation that stunned the world. But that victory haunted him. He knew the Americans were not broken. They were learning. And every day Japan celebrated, the enemy was rebuilding faster than anyone imagined. "If we push too far," he wrote, "we risk losing everything we have gained." His words were calm, analytical, not emotional. Yet between the lines there was fear. Fear of a war Japan could not win. Yamamoto understood the United States better than anyone in the Imperial Navy. He had studied at Harvard, lived in Washington, and seen the industrial power of a nation that could turn factories into arsenals overnight. To him, a long war was suicide. But to his superiors, victory at Pearl Harbor meant destiny. The empire was unstoppable, divine, guided by the emperor himself. "Midway," said the officers, "is the key. We will lure the Americans into a trap, destroy their carriers, and end the Pacific War in one blow." Yamamoto didn't smile. He stared at the map, at the tiny island halfway between Asia and America. He saw not opportunity, but danger. "They will be waiting for us," he warned. "Midway is too perfect, too obvious." No one listened. The room erupted in confidence, laughter, pride. To question the plan was to question the emperor himself. And so, his letter was filed away, stamped confidential, ignored. Outside, the cherry blossoms had already begun to fall, their short lives mirroring the fate of so many young pilots soon to take off for glory. Meanwhile, across the ocean, American intelligence officers listened to fragments of Japanese transmissions. Strange words, coded phrases, repeated patterns. One symbol kept appearing, AF. They didn't know it yet, but AF was the key to everything, and to the island that would decide the war. Back in Tokyo, Yamamoto sealed the envelope of his warning and placed it in the archives. He looked out the window toward the horizon. "They won't believe me," he said quietly, "until it's too late." And on the other side of the Pacific, a young cryptographer would soon prove him right. Inside a cramped, windowless room in Pearl Harbor, a group of young Americans stared at endless lines of numbers and letters. The air was thick with the hum of machines and the tapping of typewriters. They were cryptographers, men and women whose weapons were pencils and patience. Among them was Commander Joseph Rochefort, quiet, methodical, and brilliant. Every morning, fragments of Japanese messages arrived through static-filled radios. Most made no sense, fragments of weather reports, names, meaningless symbols. But one code kept returning again and again, AF. No one knew what it meant. Some said it was an island, others thought it was a ship. Rochefort leaned back in his chair, staring at the sea of paper. He felt it, a pattern, something familiar hidden beneath the chaos. "AF," he said softly, "is Midway." His team exchanged glances. If he was right, the Japanese were preparing an attack on the tiny atoll, the very midpoint of the Pacific, but Washington doubted him. No one wanted to believe that Japan could strike again so soon after Pearl Harbor. Days passed. The code kept repeating, AF, AF, AF. Each message stronger, more urgent. And then Rochefort had an idea. He ordered Midway to send a fake radio message, claiming their freshwater system had broken down. It was a simple lie, transmitted in plain English, knowing the Japanese would intercept it. 2 days later, Tokyo reported that AF was short on water. The room went silent. The trap was confirmed. Midway was the target. Rochefort removed his glasses, rubbed his eyes, and smiled faintly. They had outsmarted the most feared navy on Earth, not with bombs, but with words. The news rushed to Washington. For the first time since Pearl Harbor, the United States was one step ahead. And now, the admiral who had lost the Pacific, Chester W. Nimitz, had a chance to win it back. Nimitz studied the decoded reports with cold precision. He saw the timing, the positions, the confidence of the Japanese fleet. He knew this was their moment of weakness. Their arrogance would be their undoing. He moved quickly, quietly, like a chess master setting the final pieces. 3 American carriers, Enterprise, Hornet, and Yorktown, would hide northeast of Midway. They would wait in silence, invisible to the enemy's eyes. Back in Tokyo, Admiral Nagumo prepared his planes, unaware that the Americans already knew his every move. His pilots trained for victory. His ships gleamed under the rising sun. They believed they were the hunters. But far out in the endless blue of the Pacific, the hunters were already waiting. Night fell over Midway. The code breakers turned off their radios, exhausted but certain. Somewhere in the darkness, engines were already roaring. The battle that would decide the Pacific had begun, and the first shots would be fired by those who had never left their desks. June 4th, 1942. The sun rose over a calm Pacific, but beneath the waves and clouds, 2 worlds prepared to collide. Admiral Nagumo's fleet advanced in perfect formation, 4 massive carriers, their decks crowded with aircraft painted with red suns. Pilots bowed to one another, touching their foreheads to the deck before takeoff. They believed the gods were watching. From above, the sky looked peaceful. From below, it trembled with the sound of engines and war. Midway's radar detected the first blips at dawn. Sirens wailed across the island. American pilots sprinted to their planes, half awake, half terrified. They took off into the rising sun, small, underpowered aircraft against the might of the Empire. But they had something the Japanese did not: surprise. At sea, Admiral Nimitz's trap tightened. The carriers Enterprise, Hornet, and the wounded Yorktown waited silently beyond the horizon. Their scout planes searched the skies, their crews tense and wordless. Every minute felt like eternity. Nagumo received his first reports. Midway was resisting fiercely. He ordered his planes to refuel and rearm for a second strike. Bombs were hauled up, fuel hoses hissed, decks filled with chaos, and at that exact moment, fate arrived. High above the clouds, a lone American scout plane spotted the Japanese armada. The pilot's voice cracked through the radio. Enemy carriers sighted, bearing 320, distance 180 miles. The message raced across the Pacific. Within minutes, American bombers were airborne, engines screaming, hearts pounding. They had one chance, one window, before the Japanese fighters could climb to meet them. Nagumo looked up and saw dark specks forming in the sunlight. He shouted for his men to ready the Zero fighters, but it was too late. The first wave of American torpedo bombers came in low, slow, desperate, almost suicidal. They were cut down, one after another, flaming into the sea. Not one hit its target, but their sacrifice opened the sky. Japanese fighters chased them down, leaving the carriers unprotected. And in that brief, terrible moment of emptiness, the second wave appeared. From 20,000 feet, dive bombers from Enterprise and Yorktown screamed downward, sunlight flashing off their wings. The ocean seemed to rise to meet them. At 10:32 a.m., they released their bombs. Fire and steel erupted across the decks of the Akagi, Kaga, and Soryu. In seconds, the pride of Japan was engulfed in flames. Men ran, jumped, screamed, disappeared into the sea. Explosions echoed like thunder across the horizon. Nagumo stood frozen, watching everything he had built vanish in smoke and fire. He whispered the only words that came to him, "The gods have turned their faces away." And as the inferno devoured the fleet, the final carrier, Hiryu, prepared its revenge, the last breath of a dying empire. The ambush was complete, but the battle was far from over. The ocean burned. Smoke rose so high it merged with the clouds. 3 Japanese carriers were gone, their wreckage scattered like bones across the Pacific. But one remained, Hiryu, the Flying Dragon. And her commander refused to die quietly. From her deck, squadrons of dive bombers took off into the blackened sky. Their mission, destroy Yorktown. Revenge was all that remained. American lookouts spotted them too late. Sirens blared across Yorktown's deck. Men scrambled, shouting orders drowned by the scream of engines. Then the first bomb hit. A roar shook the ship from bow to stern. Flames erupted through the hangars. The second hit moments later, tearing through the flight deck. Smoke turned the blue sea into night. Crewmen fought the fires with bare hands, dragging hoses, coughing through the heat. For hours they battled, refusing to abandon ship. When the flames finally subsided, Yorktown still floated, battered, bleeding, alive. But the Hiryu was not done. A second wave came, relentless. Torpedoes streaked through the waves and slammed into the hull. Metal screamed. The ship tilted, listing heavily to port. Admiral Fletcher gave the order, "Abandon ship." Men climbed down ropes, some praying, some silent. They drifted on rafts, watching the great carrier slowly roll onto her side. The ocean swallowed her as the sun fell behind the smoke. As night descended, Hiryu celebrated. The last surviving carrier of the Imperial Navy had struck back, but their triumph would last only hours. American scout planes found her before dawn. A formation of dive bombers approached, engines low, shadows stretching over the waves. At sunrise, they attacked. 4 direct hits, explosions tore through the decks, fuel ignited, flames devoured the bridge. The Hiryu groaned, twisting in agony. Her captain ordered the crew to abandon ship. He remained behind, standing on the burning deck as his men leapt into the sea. By noon, the Flying Dragon was gone, her flag sinking beneath the waves. The battle ended as quickly as it began. The Pacific was silent again, broken only by the hiss of burning oil. Thousands were dead, and the once invincible Japanese fleet was reduced to ruins. Across the ocean in Tokyo, Yamamoto received the news. He closed his eyes and said nothing. The letter he had written weeks earlier echoed in his mind, the warning that no one had heard. The empire had reached too far, and the sea had taken everything back. The Battle of Midway was over. In a single day, the balance of the Pacific had changed forever. Japan's naval power was shattered, 4 carriers gone, hundreds of planes lost, and with them, the illusion of invincibility. In Washington, the news spread like fire. For the first time since Pearl Harbor, there was hope. Admiral Nimitz stood on the deck of the Enterprise, watching the endless horizon. He didn't smile. He knew the war was far from over, but he also knew the tide had turned. Back in Tokyo, silence filled the halls of the Imperial Navy. No one spoke of victory now. Maps were cleared, reports burned, and the faces of fallen officers replaced by photographs draped in black. Yamamoto read the final dispatch with heavy hands. Every word felt like a wound. He had seen it coming, the arrogance, the blindness, the refusal to listen. Now his warning was history, sealed within the ashes of Midway. He stepped outside his office, into the pale morning light. The cherry trees were gone, their petals replaced by smoke drifting from the city. He knew what the future would bring: defeat, destruction, and a generation lost to pride. But in another part of the world, the truth began to surface. Years later, historians uncovered a forgotten file, his original memorandum. It was calm, precise, and prophetic. Japan must strike fast and end the war quickly, it said. If the war drags on, we will face an enemy with limitless resources and an unbreakable will. The memo had been ignored. Now, it read like an obituary. In 1943, Yamamoto's plane was shot down over the Solomon Islands. The man who warned his nation was gone, his body recovered from the jungle, still clutching his sword. For his enemies, he remained a worthy adversary. For his people, a tragic prophet. And for history, a reminder. Empires do not fall in silence. They fall when truth is drowned by pride. Midway was not just a battle, it was the moment Japan lost the war, and the moment the world learned that intelligence could change destiny. The ocean kept its secrets. The wrecks rested beneath the waves, untouched, their stories preserved in rust and coral. But every June, when the wind sweeps across the Pacific, it carries the faint echo of engines, voices, and a whisper from the Admiral who saw it all coming. I warned them,